the India Special Broadcast India's Budget 2025 with our eminent panel in our studios. We're going to decode the big takeaways of this budget, which many experts define inclusive and futuristic. So I'm Sakal Bhatt with my colleague Mark.
Indeed, let's continue with this continued coverage of the budget of 2025-26, and here are the headlines. Major relief for middle class, no income tax up to 12 lakh rupees under the new tax regime.
There will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees.
India's Finance Minister presents her 8th consecutive budget, exempts 36 life-saving drugs from basic customs duty, FDI limit for insurance sector to be raised from 74% to 100%.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says the Indian economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. The budget focuses on driving growth, inclusive development. Well, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the Union Budget for 2025-26 in the lower house of the Indian Parliament. It marks a significant milestone with a record 8th consecutive budget that she has presented. And the focus is on the middle class. The Finance Minister said that the new tax regime will substantially reduce taxes of middle class, as there will be no income tax payable up to an income of 12 lakh rupees. Let's listen to what she said.
This government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, has always believed in the admirable energy and ability of the middle class in nation building. In recognition of their contribution, we have periodically reduced their tax burden. Right after 2014, the nil tax slab was raised to 2.5 lakhs of rupees, which was further raised to 5 lakh rupees in 2019 and to 7 lakh rupees in 2023. This is reflective of our government's trust on the middle class taxpayers. I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees.
In fact, Minister Sitharaman also said that a new tax bill will be introduced in the Parliament next week.
Over the past 10 years, our government has implemented several reforms for convenience of taxpayers, such as faceless assessment, 2, taxpayer charter, 3, faster returns, 4, almost 99% returns being on self-assessment, and 5, Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. Continuing these efforts, I reaffirm the commitment of the tax department to trust first, scrutinize later. I also propose to introduce the new income tax bill next week.
Well, in her speech, the minister asserted that the Indian economy is the fastest growing among all developing countries. And she noted that India's development track record in the past decade. She also talked about structural reforms which have drawn global attention.
Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions.
And now let's take a look at other major highlights of the budget, basically this explainer.
Her white and red sari said it all. She meant business. This was her 8th budget. the Indian economy in flight was now cruising at around 7% as it surveyed the markets around it. She saw the opportunity to put money where it mattered, in sectors that needed a boost, where India could develop and sustain an edge, and also in the infrastructure that held the economy together. Her fuel, reforms. The guiding spirit, inclusivity. And the destination, Viksit Bharat. So this is what she did. More money in the hands of the middle class. No tax with total income up to 12 lakh rupees. More credit guarantee for small businesses, the backbone of exports. Additional credit of rupees 1.5 lakh crore in the next 5 years for MSMEs. New fund of funds with expanded scope and fresh contribution of another 10,000 crore rupees to be set up for startups. Support for leather footwear and products to facilitate 22 lakh jobs. Create turnover of 4 lakh crore rupees and exports of rupees 1.1 lakh crore. India Post to be transformed into a large public logistics organization to benefit new entrepreneurs, women, self-help groups, MSMEs and large business organizations. Gig workers of online platforms to get healthcare under PM Jan Arogya Yojana to help 1 crore workers. Rupees 1.5 lakh crore proposed for 50-year interest-free loans to states for capex. Asset monetization plan for 2025-30 to plough back capital of rupees 10 lakh crores in new projects. Regulatory and fiscal measures will be fine-tuned to support the plan. Extension of Jal Jeevan Mission until 2028 with enhanced total outlay. Urban Challenge Fund of rupees 1 lakh crore to implement cities for growth hubs, creative redevelopment of cities and water and sanitation challenges. Maritime Development Fund with corpus of 25,000 crore rupees to be set up. Special window for affordable and mid-income housing. Rupees 15,000 crore for another 1 lakh units. Private sector research, development and innovation initiative gets rupees 20,000 crores. FDI limit for insurance sector raised from 75 to 100%. A light touch regulatory framework to be put in place for ease of doing business. Total estimated expenditure rupees 50.65 lakh crores. Total estimated receipts other than borrowing rupees 34.96 lakh crores. Net tax receipts estimated at 28.37 lakh crore rupees. Fiscal deficit estimated at 4.4% of GDP. Okay, let's go across once again to Mumbai. Shama Mishra is with us and she continues to interview people from industry. She's at CII in Mumbai. Shama, so fill us in more reactions from industry, mostly positive, I suppose. But a lot of also, heavy lifting is now being shifted to the industry from government. So in that context, are they willing to do that job? We can't hear you, Shama.
At CII.
Okay, go ahead.
So this time around we're talking about manufacturing, and you've heard Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, talk a lot about manufacturing and how that particular sector will lead our Viksit Bharat journey. So we have Ajay Samrani with us. He's from the manufacturing sector and MD of Tubasec. Sir, your initial reaction and what's the takeaway for the manufacturing sector?
Thank you. For me, it was quite a well-balanced budget. More or less consistent with what was a roadmap laid for 2047 Viksit Bharat. The framework was there in terms of indirect tax, infrastructure spend, and rural spend, and I think that's very important. I think the key, what I like this time is the 4 key drivers for the budget was reforms, MSME, exports and investments. I think these were very good articulated cornerstones. I think manufacturing has been we've lost some speed. If you see, we have been very consistent at 18% of the budget, GDP, sorry, and it's time now to propel. And I think creating this national manufacturing mission, also creating this kind of cluster manufacturing going forward. I think this will drive investment. We as India, as a net imported country, and it's important that we localize. And I think this is the first year she has put that foundation on manufacturing, plus complementing with MSME, the kind of push she has brought in MSME. I think overall this will give huge benefit for manufacturing. Our vision to be at least 25% of the GDP of manufacturing, the foundation has been laid in this budget. That's my take.
All right. Okay, that's his take, and we've always, been hearing that if you want your country to succeed, if you want your country to be, Atmanirbhar, definitely this particular sector, manufacturing sector, needs to have that kind of impetus, and in turn it will give a fillip to our nation's development.
Shama Mishra, thank you very much for joining us from Mumbai. We'll come back to you again. A short break here. We'll be back with more.
मिलिए इस स्कैमर से जो फर्जी बैंकिंग वेबसाइट चलाते हैं। बस फोन आने की देरी और ये है हमारे हीरो, जिन्हें लगता है इन्हें मिला है हेल्पलाइन, लेकिन असलियत में है स्कैमर की लाइफलाइन। और असली हेल्पलाइन समझकर ये इन्हें देंगे अपनी बैंक डिटेल्स। अरे भाई साहब रुकिए, वेबसाइट फेक है। SBI आपको बताएगा इन फेक वेबसाइट से कैसे बचें। सर्च करते वक्त संभालो भाई, स्कैमर्स तैयार है विद हेलो हाय। बी स्कैम सेफ।
एड्रेस घर का या वेबसाइट का?
चल पड़े हैं गांव, चल पड़ा इंडिया, चल पड़े हैं गांव, चल पड़ा इंडिया। गेहूं धान बाजरा जवार के मैदानों में, छोटे छोटे धंधे या बड़े कामों में, फूलों के पॉली हाउस सब्जियों के बागानों में, सोलर बदल रहा है रात को उजालों में। फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन से टेक्निकल रेवोल्यूशन, हर जगह जमा रहा है पावर गांव इंडिया।
वर्ष 1982 से गांव-गांव को देश की मुख्य धारा से जोड़ रहा है नाबार्ड। गांव बढ़े तो देश बढ़े।
चल पड़े हैं गांव, चल पड़ा इंडिया।
पहले अधिकतर लड़कियां छोटा मोटा बिजनेस करती थी,
लेकिन अब SBI देता है हर नारी को बिजनेस बढ़ाने के लिए कम टाइम में डिजिटल MSME बिजनेस लोन।
इसलिए अब लड़कियां बड़ा बड़ा बिजनेस करती हैं।
मिल गया ऑर्डर। SBI बैटिंग फॉर नारी शक्ति।
ये है स्कैमर साहब, देंगे KYC या पैन अपडेट की गोली और ले जाएंगे आपके बैंक डिटेल्स इन वन झोली। और हमारे नागरिक को मिलता है एक झटका, लिंक पे क्लिक करते ही मुसीबत का दरवाजा खुल जाता है। वेबसाइट लगे जेन्युइन पर है फेक, अब स्कैमर खाएगा महंगा केक। ओ मैडम रुक जाइए, लिंक है फेक। आपकी सेविंग्स की सिक्योरिटी आपके हाथ में है। अपडेट करना हो KYC या पैन, अनजान लिंक को करे बैन। बी स्कैम सेफ।
मेरा सेविंग्स अकाउंट ओपन हो गया और बैंक भी जाना नहीं पड़ा।
रियली? तू जानता है इसका बैंक कौन है?
कौन है सर?
SBI। ओपन डिजिटल सेविंग्स अकाउंट यूजिंग वीडियो KYC। इसे कहते हैं सॉलिड बैंक की सॉलिड बैकिंग।
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। लेकिन बिजनेस शुरू हो गया तो इन दोनों कौन संभालेगा?
मम्मी तुम बिजनेस संभालो, रोहन को मैं संभाल लूंगी।
बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
पढ़ाई में लड़कियों के नंबर अक्सर ज्यादा ही आते हैं,
इसलिए SBI देता है हर नारी को एजुकेशन लोन्स 0.5% कम इंटरेस्ट रेट्स पे,
ताकि मास्टर्स के लिए विदेश जाने वाली लड़कियों का नंबर भी ज्यादा रहे।
SBI बैटिंग फॉर नारी शक्ति।
It's another 6.
रिचार्ज, जल्दी रिचार्ज करा।
ये क्या किया? मैच तो गया।
पेमेंट कैसे करेंगे?
टोकनाइज कार्ड से।
टोकन?
हाँ, ऑनलाइन पेमेंट के लिए आरबीआई लाए हैं टोकनाइजेशन। एक बार कार्ड डिटेल्स, ओटीपी, सीवीवी डालकर टोकन जनरेट कीजिए। कार्ड भी सुरक्षित और बार बार डिटेल्स भरने की नो झंझट। वही सुविधा अधिक सुरक्षित।
ऑलराउंडर।
वो की मैं। आरबीआई कहता है कि
जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। लेकिन बिजनेस शुरू हो गया तो इन दोनों कौन संभालेगा?
मम्मी, तुम बिजनेस संभालो, रोहन को मैं संभाल लूंगी।
बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
Timeless, boundless and infinite. The essence of faith. The soul of Sanatan culture. From the sacred confluence of Prayag, where divinity descends to earth. Witness the grandeur, the devotion, the magic. World's largest cultural and spiritual gathering, with over 450 million devotees expected to attend. Mahakumbh, India's greatest festival of faith. Exclusively on DD India.
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस। पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। लेकिन बिजनेस शुरू हो गया तो इन दोनों कौन संभालेगा?
मम्मी, तुम बिजनेस संभालो, रोहन को मैं संभाल लूंगी।
बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
हमको भी आगे बढ़ाओ। Get us the story.
What's the next story? Welcome back to our continued coverage of the Union Budget, which was presented by the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman for the year 2025-26. February 1st is the day on which the budget is presented as per custom. That started in 2017, in fact, and it has become a nice tradition. So, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that this budget will initiate reforms in 6 areas. This will augment our growth potential and also global competitiveness. The domains: taxation, power sector, urban development, mining, financial sector, and regulatory reforms.
This budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains. During the first 5 years, these will augment our growth potential and global competitiveness. The domains are taxation, power sector, urban development, mining, financial sector, and regulatory reforms.
The minister also said that the proposed development measures in Budget 2025 span 10 broad areas, focusing on Garib youth, Garib, which means the marginalized youth, the youth capital of the country, Annadata, the farmers, and Nari, that's women empowerment.
In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas, focusing on Garib, youth, Annadata, and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path, boosting manufacturing and furthering Make in India, supporting MSMEs, enabling employment-led development, investing in people, economy, and innovation.
Well, India's Minister for Information and Broadcasting, Ashwini Vaishnav, hailed the budget 2025 presented by the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. And taking to social media site X, the minister said that this year's budget lays the roadmap for Viksit Bharat, that is a developed India. And he also said that with growth, inclusion and innovation at its core, this budget covers all from farmers to fintech, MSMEs to AI. And we continue to have with us Prasanjit Basu, economist, and Professor Rajat Kathuria, economist, with us. Thank you both for being with us. Professor Kathuria, let me come to you. Now, tax compliance is obviously going to improve, we can see, because things are made easier. People are also quite happy that they have more money in their hands. Do you see, that improving tax buoyancy?
I do. In fact, one of the sort of bottlenecks, constraints in India has been getting more and more people into the tax net. Remember when GST had come on and we had asked everybody to register for GST, there was an initial reluctance for people to register themselves on the GST portal. And I remember talking to people, we were doing surveys as economists, we were looking at, because GST is a good thing. And we had waited to have a GST for 25 years. Unfortunately, the GST has been sort of complicated, and I think we're in the process of rationalizing the GST rates. But what people's reaction at that time was that they felt we would not register for fear of coming into the tax net, even the direct tax net. And people were basically afraid. They didn't mind paying taxes. That was the sort of response that we often got from our surveys, that people don't mind paying taxes. But what people do mind and do get affected by is the harassment that has often happened to them as a result of non-compliance, perceived non-compliance.
Right.
So I think that, I mean, I'm talking, you've seen Bollywood films where, you know, income tax officers go in and harass the people. I mean, that was the image. That was the image. I mean, that's not a recent phenomenon. That's been going on since the 70s and 80s because this was depicted in those films. But I think now there's a regime change that is occurring. You say that taxpayers are going to pay their taxes, you bestow trust on them, and they will pay the taxes because they, you know, at the end of the day, they recognize that this is for nation building. And often taxpayers ask, what is it that I'm getting in return for what I pay? That is also another response of taxpayers. So to cut a long story short, I think the measures to improve sort of trustworthiness amongst the population and to have light touch regulation, as the finance minister said a couple of times, and I think that's the way to go towards a developed country, developed India. Light touch regulation, compliance will come naturally, and if compliance comes, it's not the low tax rates that is giving you compliance only. It's the low tax rates combined with the light touch regulation that will give you the buoyancy.
Mr. Basu, the light touch regulation, I mean, there's a whole service, right? The revenue service, that's the customs service, and all these guys, they're all there. And the cost of collecting the tax also, I mean, there's one of the canons of taxation is the cost doesn't have to be so high, right? I mean, it could be very high. You're maintaining the kind of infrastructure to collect taxes when the taxes are becoming much more easy to pay.
They're becoming easy to pay, and the pace at which refunds occur, etc., has increased manifold. So in many ways the burden.
So what does your liberal mind say to all that that I've asked?
My basic, I mean, so that is all good. That is all in the right direction. But when I compare our tax code, especially the old tax regime, with the other places where I've lived, in the United States, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, I've paid taxes in all these places. And what I find interesting is that our tax code is way more complicated than everybody else. Now, what is good though is that the new tax regime is making things a lot simpler, and that is good. Now, the interesting thing is most taxpayers. Yesterday, I was on a show on one of the private channels, and they had a wish list of how to improve the old tax regime. Now, the government has said repeatedly that the old tax regime is passé, and we are now moving to the new tax regime, where it is a simplified code. Now, if you compare the actual tax burden today, after this new regime is put in place, this much lower level of taxation across the board, lower slabs, much higher exemption limit, etc. I'm pretty sure that for the majority of taxpayers, the tax burden will come down. But apparently, some people who use the old tax regime used to have HRA, they used to have 80cc and all these various, I have been learning these codes. But the point is that there may be some who will not benefit even from this. So, but in my mind, from a liberal standpoint, it makes sense to move away from that old tax regime, which was the most complicated.
So what does this? Yes, I'm sticking to this point only. So Rajatji, I'm sure what you are basically going to talk about also deals with my question. That at the end of the day, what does this 12 lakh rebate mean? And have we finally simplified the taxation system? The apprehension prior to this new regime you were talking about. Yes. Are we offsetting that fear with this?
So I think, let me try and answer that question, giving you an example of how economic reform. India is a country where economic reform happens on the back of a crisis, largely in every country. Big bang reform happens on the back of a crisis. When you're talking of incremental changes such as these, this is probably an incremental change, long overdue, and I think simplification of the tax regime is extremely important. But even in incremental changes, what is happening, you're moving from an old economy and an ecosystem to a new economy and an ecosystem. Right. And while, as Prasenjit says, that there will be benefit to the taxpayer, there is an old ecosystem that prevails around the old tax regime. And they will want to prevent the change from happening. Absolutely. Just like, when you have privatization, for example, there is a regime that wants the perpetration of the status quo. You know,
the finance system also includes the taxpayer, because some senior citizens want to stick to this.
The taxpayer is one part of that ecosystem, but there are people who interpret the tax laws, and the finance minister made this point. We are going to make the law simple, easy to understand, so that normal people can also understand the tax regime and the tax laws. Today, often you cannot understand what is written in the tax code, and you have to seek the help of specialized people, lawyers, chartered accountants, to interpret that tax regime. Why can't you have what we had in the past? We had said you'll have a saral tax regime, simple, easy to understand, in multiple Indian languages. India is not a one language nation. India is the UPSC exam is conducted in multiple languages. So we have a simple tax code, you know, not only written in English and Hindi, it should be written in multiple languages so that people can understand it. And one more point, Mark, and I think what is important is that while you know, one sort of taxpayers will gain, they are often sort of led by what advice they get from people, right? And those people are driving the system as well.
Yes.
And tax administration reform is equally important. And I'm saying this with sort of some evidence. When the finance minister makes a rule, makes a law, it has to implement it, not by the Ministry of Finance. It has to be implemented by people at the ground, people in Bombay, people in Pune, the CBDT, the indirect taxes implementation. All that has to be done at the ground level. That's where reform also needs to happen. Friendly regime.
Just taking a little detour, and we have to touch upon other sectors as well. Though we'll again come back to tax. I think that's something which is going to be the talking point for many more days to come, till we actually get a hang of the whole idea of simplification of taxes. But shifting gears to tourism. So what do we have in tourism sector? Finance Minister Sitharaman in today's budget also highlighted the overall growth and the parameters that would spur growth in tourism sector, especially the employment-led growth. Let's listen.
For employment-led growth, top 50 tourist destination sites in the country will be developed in partnership with states through a challenge mode. Land for building key infrastructure will have to be provided by the states. Hotels in these destinations will be included in the infrastructure harmonized list. Providing mudra loans for homestays. Improving ease of travel and connectivity to tourist destinations. Providing performance-linked incentives to states for effective destination management, including tourist amenities, cleanliness, and marketing efforts. And introducing streamlined e-visa facilities along with visa fee waivers for certain tourist groups.
Well, hailing India's fish production that ranks second in the world, the finance minister said that the government will bring in an enabling environment, a framework for sustainable harnessing of fisheries.
India ranks second largest globally in fish production and aquaculture. Seafood exports are valued at 60,000 crore rupees. To unlock the untapped potential of the marine sector, our government will bring in an enabling framework for sustainable harnessing of fisheries from Indian exclusive economic zone and high seas, with a special focus on the Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep Islands.
Okay, let's quickly go across to another special guest joining us on this broadcast, Shubhakant Panda. Of course, the past President FICCI and Managing Director, Indian Metals and Ferroalloys Limited, joining us on this special broadcast. Thank you very much, Mr. Panda, for sparing time. A quick overview and your take as far as budget interventions. Can we have him on the screen, please? Budget interventions in cutting across various sectors are concerned. And yes, there is a lot of chatter and talk now that how this new tax regime is going to put more money in the hands of people. And I think by and large, the Janata has given a heads up and, a positive nod to the announcements.
Good afternoon, Sakal. It's a pleasure to be on Doordarshan with you talking about the budget. I think it's a budget which ticks all the boxes, and most certainly the finance minister saved the best for last with the blockbuster announcement about the tax relief with a focus on the middle class. 1 lakh crore going into the hands of people, I think, is a very, very significant number, which is bound to boost consumption going ahead, and that obviously augurs well. Because at a time when there are external headwinds, I think we have to look inwards, we have to look within, without, of course, forgetting the export markets. But, we have to rely on our own strengths and unified domestic market to achieve growth. I think the other thing which stood out was the statement about reforms as fuel. I think we got a precursor of that in the economic survey, which was presented yesterday. And clearly there is a thread of reforms being used to improve ease of doing business, ease of living, and generally to provide impetus. I think that came through. But if I were to talk a little bit about the manufacturing sector, which is what I represent, I think it's good to hear about the National Manufacturing Mission with a focus on labor-intensive sectors, because again, we cannot have a situation of jobless growth. It is important that jobs are created, and I've also been a firm believer that India's growth to a large extent has to be predicated on the manufacturing sector. So from that point of view, the National Manufacturing Mission, the Export Promotion Mission, these will all have a good impact at a time when our fundamentals are strong, but external factors are sort of weighing down a little bit on us.
Right, Mr. Panda, also with regard to insurance, this is the announcement that the budget made of FDI limit for insurance sector being raised from 74 to 100%. In general, what do you what do you foresee for FDI coming into the country?
Well, this is certainly something which will bring in more investment into the country, and insurance, of course, is a very important sector because it permeates throughout the economy. It's long-term money which comes in, and if I heard the FM right, this exemption is available provided all the premium income is invested within the country. I think that's a smart rider, if I can use a pun related to the insurance industry. So that's something that'll certainly augur well. And again, as we grow and develop as an economy, the role of insurance, be it at an individual level to provide safety and security, or be it at a corporate level, is something which is important, and therefore, bringing in more long-term money into the sector and seeing that that there is that it is there to aid and abet growth is welcome.
Also, are you satisfied and happy with the trust-based quote-unquote regulatory framework announced by Minister Sitharaman in tandem with what CA said that, and I'm quoting him, but get out of the way and trust people we must, for we have no other choice.
Absolutely, Sakal. That's that was what I think came through in the economic survey yesterday, and the CEA's press conference, and also in the finance minister's statement today. So the regulatory reforms and strengthening trust-based regulations, I think, is a wonderful move. And she cited examples, particularly with regard to income tax filings, where giving a little bit of leeway to people to sort of address any inadvertent issues in filing, etc., has paid strong dividends. So I think generally it is something that we must focus on. And that famous statement, trust but verify. So trust people. And ensure that anybody who misuses that trust faces the music. But by and large, I think most people, if are law-abiding and want to go about their lives, in a manner which enables them to sleep peacefully at night.
Indeed, and from the manufacturing sector point of view, there are certain customs duties that have been reduced, exemptions on open cell for LED, LCD TVs, looms for textiles, capital goods for lithium-ion batteries and mobile phones and EVs. This is to boost Make in India. How would you view this?
So I look at that from two angles. One is, in as much as specific sectors are concerned where rates have been brought down, I think that's being done with a view to, as the Finance Minister said, to boost domestic manufacturing, to promote exports, to boost value addition. So I think some of these changes have been done keeping that in mind. But equally, I think what we must not miss out on is doing away with 7 tariff rates altogether and leaving only 8 in place. I think that's the sort of simplification that FICCI had advocated very strongly. We had also talked about simplifying TDS and TCS rates, and that seems to have been done to some extent. So I think these are, again, it boils down to making things simpler and literally, as was articulated, getting out of the way and allowing the private sector and citizens to do their bit. But I want to add one other point, which is that I think what is very striking is the fiscal glide path which has been maintained, because containing the fisc at 4.8% for the current year and estimating it to be 4.4% for the coming year is something which is significant, because what it means is that even as a lot of money has been pumped into the economy or is being proposed to be pumped into the economy, the Finance Minister is not doing that in a profligate manner. She's making sure the books are balanced, and she's making sure that the credibility of the whole budgeting exercise is maintained by sticking to the fiscal glide path.
As a former FICCI chief, and I remember when we used to speak to you earlier, you would also speak about the big push that's needed in the MSME sector. Well, today, how do you view the launch of the Export Support Mission, and also your final comments with that, Mr. Panda, very briefly? We're running short of time. Overall, an industry view on the budget, this budget, in terms of the wish list that you had, is this in continuation, and would you call it futuristic as well as inclusive?
So definitely futuristic and inclusive, but specifically on the MSME sector, I think the increase in the turnover and investment limits to classify as an MSME is very significant, as well as the credit support which has been provided. And the export promotion mission to be coordinated by the Commerce, MSME and Finance Ministries is indicative of a coordinated effort to address this. So certainly inclusive in as much as wish list is concerned. Many of those wish lists have been met, and I think we need to get cracking on a few more points where we can get the government to target inclusive, broad-based growth.
Yes, the government is certainly in a mission mode. Thank you very much, Mr. Panda, for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this special broadcast. Thank you. And I would request our guests to have a little bit more patience before we take this discussion forward, because we need to take a very short break here. Delhi studio discussion continues on this special broadcast, India Budget 2025. Me and Mark are going to just join back after a break.